So we're finally here for the first ever TCG from Disney. Brought to you by Ravensburger, Lorcana is sure to be a hit. In this video, my goal is to teach you guys how to play the game and understand the game enough to be able to get a couple practice games in with your family, your friends, and maybe even take it to a competitive scene. So let's get right into it. Ultimately, a player's goal in the Lorcana trading card game is to get to 20 lore. Now, how we mostly get the lore is based off our character cards. But before we get too deep in winning the game and how we get to that 20 lore, let's talk about the multiple cards that can be in your deck. Your deck is, like I said, 60 card deck that is going to be filled with either characters, items, or songs. So what do all the cards in the Lorcana game have in common? A cost. The way we can go ahead and paint these cards into our board, whether they be characters, items, or songs, is by using ink. Ink is the resource system that is cleverly already built into your deck in the Lorcana trading card game. How do you know which cards and cards cannot be used as ink? Well, they're denoted like this. In this card, you can see that right around its cost, there's a clever little symbol that basically means this card can be turned into ink, whereas the card over here does not have said symbol. In order to turn a card into ink, we're using too much words, but the way that you basically do it is you show a card to your opponent that can be inked, reveal it, turn it face down, and place it into your inkwell. Your inkwell is the resource system that you will be using for the rest of your game to summon these very powerful characters, items, and or songs. A quick little example of how you go ahead and play a card in the Lorcana trading card game looks a little like this. I reveal Be Our Guest to my opponent, I flip it over and place it into my inkwell. Then I turn it sideways, tap it, just to denote that I've used this ink, and then with this ink, I'm going to go ahead and summon Flounder, Voice of Reason. So character cards. Character cards are the specific card that make up the majority of your deck that are denoted with 4 separate sections. We have a character's cost that we've already discussed before, its stat value that's broken down into strength and willpower, its lore value that can be used to get to the 20 lore winning condition, as well as sometimes a possible character individualized effect. But before we get too in depth with the stat values and the lore values, that's going to be covered later on in this video. I just wanted to go ahead and show you what you can see in each specific character card. Items. Item cards are, again, very similar to all the cards in your deck. We have already covered their cost, but they have a specific effect. Item glimmers are cards that you can go ahead and summon, and there are enchantments that stay on your side of the board throughout the majority of the game, powering yourself or your characters up to get to that 20 lore value. Actions are a one-time use card in the Lorcana trading card game that give you an immediate advantage. Once you go ahead and play an action, it immediately goes into your discard pile after it's resolved its effect. Now, there's a subcategory of actions called songs, but we'll save that little bit for later on in this video. Before starting your game, players will shuffle their deck and set their lore tracker to 0. Once they've done that, they draw a hand of 7 cards and get ready for their match. It is important to note that in the Lorcana trading card game, competitively, games are best 2 out of 3. In game 1, neither player is allowed to alter their hand, but in game 2 and 3, players are allowed to look at their hand, place cards to the bottom of their deck, and draw until they have a new hand of 7, shuffling after and getting ready to start their game. The beginning phase is broken down into 3 sections: ready, set, draw. In the ready phase, you're going to ready your exerted cards by turning them upright. Set means check for effects that happen at the start of your turn and follow their instructions. And then the draw phase. Draw a card from the top of your deck. The first player skips this step on their first turn. The second phase is the main phase. Once per turn, you can put a card face down into your inkwell at any time. Additionally, you can play a card, use a character ability that doesn't require them to exert, use an item ability, take an action with a character that's been in play at the start of your turn, meaning that characters that you summon during your turn cannot take these actions, but those that have been there previously can quest, they can challenge an opponent's exerted character, or they can use an ability that requires them to be exerted. To not get a little bit confused on what it means to use specific cards, there is a way to keep track of it. The way that we denote that a card's effect has been used or an ink has been used to play a card is by exerting it. Exerting it is the way that we have denoted in the Lorcana trading card game that a card's effect has been used. And you do that by turning a card into a sideways position. Once a card is in this sideways position, whether it be a character, an item, an ink, it means that it's already been used for the turn. Most cards have a once per turn effect that requires them to exert, but those that do not have to be exerted can do their effect multiple times. So now that we've talked about or touched upon the things that we can do on the main phase, let's talk about the specific things that characters can do. Characters can do up to 4 actions during their turn. So let's talk about those things individually. What does it mean to quest? Well, what we do when we quest in the Lorcana trading card game is we exert our character and we immediately gain the lore value that the character has on the character card. This allows us to get closer and closer to our 20 lore win condition in the Lorcana trading card game. If questing is how a player wins the game, challenging is how you can slow your opponent down from doing so. To challenge a character, first we exert one of our characters and send them into the challenge. Then we choose an opponent's exerted character to challenge. It's important to note that you cannot challenge a readied character. Both characters in challenge deal damage. In order to deal damage, you look at each character's strength and put that many damage counters on the other character. Once the damage counters exceeds the amount of willpower a character has, that character is banished and sent to the discard pile. It's important to note that damage counters are permanent unless specified by other effects. So even though a character can be challenged, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're banished and could be challenged multiple times in order to be sent to the discard pile. Sometimes a character's ability will require them to become exerted. In this example, we're going to be using Elsa, the Snow Queen, and her ability Freeze. Once you see the symbol right next to the Freeze key term, you know that your character needs to become exerted in order to fulfill the second portion of the effect. To use the Freeze ability, we exert Elsa in order to exert a chosen opposing character. Just like this character card, there are many others that require you to become exerted in order to activate their very powerful abilities. Lastly, characters can sing songs. As mentioned earlier, songs are a kind of action card, but there's a special rule that gives you another way to pay for them. Each song says, a character with a cost of X or more can exert themselves in order to sing this song for free. If you have a character with a listed cost or higher, you can exert said character to play that song instead of exerting your inkwell in order to do so. Once using this approach, it still counts as playing the card, so as immediately after you finish resolving the action's effect, you can send the card to the discard pile. So all there's left to do is build your deck, get a friend, and start playing the Lorcana trading card game. If you guys have any more questions or want to watch some gameplay to better elaborate the rules and gameplay aspects to see it a little bit more fluid, make sure to check out our Lorcana videos on this channel, as well as our Patreon, where we're going to be posting out competitive Lorcana content. I'll see you Illumineers on the next time.